You're listening to the Career Jump Podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew MacAskill.
Today's guest is Hannah Mason. Now, Hannah runs the English meeting room with her husband, and they've been really successful in helping job seekers all over the world optimize their CV, get better results from their job searching activities, and show up well on LinkedIn. Now, Hannah's content on LinkedIn is exceptionally good. And in 2020, Hannah was awarded a LinkedIn Top Voice status, which is great recognition for the value that Hannah's added to the LinkedIn ecosystem. So you're going to hear a conversation right now about business ownership, about CV structures, about the myth of ATS machines and why not to fear them, and a whole lot more. So I really hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hello, welcome back to the Executive Career Jump podcast. I'm your host and career concierge, Andrew MacAskill, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Hannah Mason. How are you, Hannah?
I'm good, Andrew. How are you?
Yeah, we're really good. Very excited to have you on. Been following you on LinkedIn for some time and love what you're doing. But for those people who aren't following you, can you just tell us a little bit more about your work and your background, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I lived in Dubai for 8 years and I was recruiting across the Middle East market, primarily focused on recruiting lawyers out there. And then after some time, I decided to start my own business, which is called the English Meeting Room. And we are focused on helping people who are looking for jobs. We primarily do that through CV writing, interview coaching, LinkedIn support, and also job search strategy support. So since we've been doing that, we've been posting lots of advice on LinkedIn and other social channels, and we've grown a following to over 600,000 on there now, and we were recognised last year as a top voice for career and job search advice. And yeah, that's basically it. I'm back in the UK now, and so really working with people internationally on their job search.
Yeah, no, I love it. And congratulations on being recognised with that top voice. Much deserved based on the quality of your content. So well done on that.
Oh, thank you.
Interested, just first of all, because you've had that time out in the UAE and are now back in the UK, what do you think differs in terms of job searching in the two markets? I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, in many ways, they're very different. So, you know, in Dubai, it's a totally multicultural city, and you get very different types of CVs, different approaches to the job search, and the job descriptions themselves and the hiring requirements themselves are very different from the UK. So in the UK, it's really regulated in terms of what you can say on a job advert and what type of experience you can ask for. Whereas in Dubai, they're working towards that, but you do see all sorts of weird and wonderful things, asking for people to be attractive or certain ethnicities or certain ages. So it is quite a different market. But I think, you know, the key principles do remain the same. And I think, you know, focusing on really having a targeted job search, focusing on your network, it's important across all different markets. Although I think in the UAE, in the Middle East, networking is even more important, perhaps because it's very much people will hire people who are their friends or family. And there is a definite culture of that in the Middle East, I think even more than in the UK. Yeah,
I've heard it can take a little bit of a while to find your way in and break down some of those barriers as a new expat, for example. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I think it depends what type of role you're targeting and what your goals are. So actually for me, I got 2 job offers within 1 week of moving to the UK, but I was, I guess, focusing on international companies who were looking for native English speakers. And so I was a good fit for those roles. And they were also looking for people who didn't necessarily have Middle Eastern experience. Whereas certainly if you're applying for perhaps more local types of companies or for roles where they're looking for that international experience, it can take a while to find your feet and get those opportunities.
Absolutely. And so I'm fascinated as well in terms of what it was that made you decide to set up your own business in the end, in the career coaching and CV writing space. Tell us a bit more about that story.
Yeah, well, after working in recruitment for a few years, actually I had my baby girl and I finished that role and was wondering kind of what was next, and had always quite wanted to do my own thing. Well, me and my husband both actually really wanted to have our own business. It was a long-term kind of dream of ours. And the first thing I did was I started tutoring English to non-native English speakers. It was a great thing to do while my daughter was very young and something I'd always wanted to do. So I started doing that, and a lot of my clients wanted help with their CVs as part of the English lessons. So I was really working with them through their CVs, and having that recruitment experience, I realized, oh, actually, I've got a lot of knowledge here. And friends and people I knew as well would often come and ask for help with their CVs because of my recruitment background. And it just became really, really clear that as much as I like teaching English, my knowledge as a recruiter and, I guess my English skills and my ability to write well could really, really help people in their job search. And so sort of started transitioning firstly to helping non-native English speakers with their CVs, with their job search, and then it's just expanded and grown from there.
Tremendous. I always think of a CV almost like an international language in some ways.
Yeah.
People always ask, do you think, CVs will phase out or become a thing of the past? And my response is normally no, because I believe it is the international, it's almost like your career passport in many ways that's understood globally pretty much. What's your thoughts? Do you think we'll ever see the end of the CV? I know there's been a lot of disruptors trying to get to that point. Do you think that'll ever happen?
I think in certain industries, it's starting to have less importance. I don't think it'll ever go completely, but I've seen interesting things happening, especially in the tech world, where, instead of uploading your CV, you need to do some challenges, online challenges to show that you've got the skills. I think for those types of roles where they can actually test you online, which, isn't going to be every industry, but I think industries where they can do that, that's going to become more common. And then I think also in that sort of social media space, that digital marketing space, I'm seeing lots more people who are bypassing a CV completely and they're doing a video. I saw on LinkedIn today someone who wanted a job on TikTok. So they created a TikTok CV account, especially for their job search, and just started putting videos out there in a kind of TikTok format, which I'm far too old to understand, unfortunately. But I'm kind of past that. But yeah, they were using this TikTok format and they got hired by TikTok as a result of that. So I think there is a bit more creativity that's coming into the job search, but I'm sure the CV will never go away, because for all of its flaws, and I know people talk about all of the flaws in the hiring process and the CV process, it's still probably the most efficient way to evaluate a few hundred applicants and decide who to interview for a role.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So for somebody who's listening, a lot of our listeners are in transition, as you know. So for somebody who's listening, maybe about to update their CV or maybe even create one for the first time in a long time, any kind of initial tips or things for people to think about, please? It'd be tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the absolute first thing you need to do is really understand the jobs that you're applying for. I think the biggest mistake I see people make is they're not really sure what they're going for, but they think, well, the first thing is I need to update my CV. So they sit down, they just start writing a CV without a particular job in mind. But recruiters who are evaluating CVs, and you'll know this as someone who's worked in recruitment for a long time, Andrew, that the main thing they're doing is they're looking at the job description that they've got in front of them, the role that they're hiring for, they're comparing it to the CV, and they're really looking for that match. Especially if they're receiving hundreds of CVs for a role, they're not necessarily looking beyond what you've written to kind of pull out your potential. They've probably got people who are matching the job quite well, and they're the people that they're going to contact. So if you don't have a particular role in mind that you're writing the CV for, it's really hard to actually show that you've got the skills that they're looking for. I think that's absolutely the first thing. Think of it as a marketing document for that particular role. And I think that's where most people go wrong. If you're doing that, if you're writing it as a marketing document for the particular role that you're going for, everything else kind of follows from that.
don't be generic is the key theme that came out there, I think. What about in terms of length and format, all of this sort of stuff? There's always lots of debate, isn't there, on LinkedIn and other platforms around, any ideals. What's Hannah Mason's take on length, format, etc.? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, people love to talk about CV length, I think.
Okay.
I think people are looking for that magic bullet, right? Just maybe if I can just get the length of my CV right, that's it, I'll get the job. The reality is there's no perfect solution for everybody. I think 1 to 2 pages or even 3 pages is where most people will fall within that bracket. I think if you're going beyond that, you're possibly going to lose the reader's interest, or you're just going to look like someone who can't be concise and focused. If you've got a lot of experience and you're trying to squeeze it into 1 page, that can become very cluttered, or you can end up editing out way too much information. So I think you've got to think, how much do I need to really show that I'm qualified for the job, show that I'm the right person for the job? For most people, that's probably about 2 pages. And in terms of format, I think just keep it simple. I don't know about you, but when I used to look at lots and lots of CVs, if the information was in strange places where I wasn't expecting to find it, it actually just takes longer to understand the CV. It might look nice, but it can actually have a negative effect, or they might just miss what you're trying to say. So I think keep it simple, use a sort of standard format, and make sure that your content is what's kind of selling you for the role.
Yeah, totally. And I think I always talk about white space. I like to see a little bit of white space, make it easy to digest.
Yeah.
The amount of times where I can see where somebody's been told it has to be less than 2 pages, and so they've gone with like a size 9 font, and then just wedged it all in, and you're like, no, don't do that. It's got to be easy to digest.
Yeah.
Depending on which research you look at, it's obviously 6 or 7 seconds that people are scanning these things, and that matches my own experience as well. So yeah, really good tips there. Keep it simple. I think it's an important message. There's no magic bullet or one size fits all, despite what some people might try and flog you on the internet. There really isn't. The other thing that always comes up, I don't know if you've seen this, is all this debate around ATS machines and the role that computers and AI play in shortlisting. Again, I think the keep it simple bit is probably some good advice, but what's your thoughts or considerations around ATSs when you're helping people with their own resume?
Yeah, it's a really contentious topic. I've seen people getting really mad about this. I'm on LinkedIn, especially recently. I think, my experience of ATS, and there are lots of different systems. So, I mean, for anyone that's not familiar, it stands for Applicant Tracking System, but essentially there's lots of different types of software that have been created out there that recruiters use, but it's just the software that a recruiter uses, and they kind of vary in their capabilities and what they can do. But as a basic function, it's storing all the applications, and the recruiter can view the applications in the system and decide whether to shortlist or reject the candidate, and it tracks them, as the name suggests. So I think, firstly, candidates shouldn't fear ATS. I think there's a little bit of fear mongering going on that says the ATS is rejecting your resume. 85% of CVs are rejected by ATS. That's not my experience. When we receive CVs, there was no automation that would reject the CVs that came through, but I would look through each and every CV, and I would reject or shortlist the candidate based on whether they met the requirements for the role. But I think, one thing to consider is that a lot of these systems will pass information from your CV and extract it and perhaps create a snapshot profile of you. And sometimes you might experience that when you log on to a portal and it automatically populates your information. That's the ATS extracting or passing your information. So I think having a kind of quite standard layout that's written as a Word document just helps that happen accurately. But also, recruiters will go back to their database and they might conduct searches, they might conduct quite advanced searches or run filters. And so again, if your CV's written as a Word document and it's an easily readable format, that's just going to help that process as well. And it's going to make sure that whatever system they're using is able to correctly identify the information that you've put in your CV.
Yeah, back to that. Keep it simple. That's what it's all about. Yeah. And definitely don't fear it. It has been used inappropriately to sell solutions. One of the previous guests on this podcast undertook some quite extensive research, and in 85% of cases, it is still a human that is reviewing these things. So again, no magic bullet. Don't fear it will fall into the hype, I think is the key message there. Absolutely right.
Yeah. And even if there are some smart tools where it is ranking the CVs, and I've seen that certain job portals that I've used, it will show me the results of the applications and it will rank them based on relevance. So there is some AI there that's interpreting your information and ranking it based on how relevant it is. But ultimately, I'm still the person who's looking at the CV and shortlisting or rejecting it. So if you're just writing it with a computer system in mind, you might rank highly, but a person still is going to review it at the end of the day. So, you still have to write it for a human reader in mind, not just cram it full of keywords.
Yeah, that is such a good point. Thank you for that.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew here. Just wanted to very briefly interrupt this podcast episode to tell you a little bit more about our Career Jump Club. So our Career Jump Club was created to help job seekers understand what they want and how to get it, right? So becoming a club member is a great move if you're looking to get the clarity and confidence in order to secure your next role. With the membership, you get a number of different things. So first thing you get is access to our online platform, which has over 30 videos, 40, 50 different templates, workbooks, and it takes you through everything from sort of understanding what you want to how to position your CV and LinkedIn, how to interview, how to close offers and negotiate better salaries, a full end-to-end job search course effectively for senior leaders. So you get that, you get a fortnightly group coaching call, which is with me and with the other members, where we bounce around best practice, share slide decks, share techniques, and share the latest data on what's working for people. And you get to, most importantly, become part of our closed LinkedIn group and our closed community. And in there is where the magic often happens, because you get people referring each other into opportunity, supporting each other, and just sharing. And that's what it's all about. So if you're financially able and you'd like to invest in your job search, head on over to www.execcareerjump.com, all one word, /club, and you'll find the landing page and come and give it a go. We'll see you in there. Anyway, back to the pod.
We can't have you on without asking you a bit more about LinkedIn. You've got a remarkable size following on there. As you said at the start, you were awarded a top voice status in 2020, which was really exciting. But for people, just starting their own journey on the LinkedIn platform, it can be quite an intimidating place, can't it, Hannah, when you start going on there? What kind of advice would you have for people in terms of how to get the best out of LinkedIn from a job search perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I set up my LinkedIn profile, it was really nerve-wracking, and I every connection request I sent sort of agonized over, will this person accept me? Will they not? I think firstly, don't let that hold you back. Absolutely, it's an invaluable tool, whatever point you are at in your career, whether you're actively looking for a job or whether you're just wanting to be aware of opportunities that are out there. So recruiters and especially headhunters, if they're actively looking for candidates, in my experience, LinkedIn is the first place they go to find people. It's like a database of professionals for them to find people for their roles. So I guess there's two main ways to get the most out of LinkedIn. The first is to be found by headhunters, and that's a bit more passive, and that really involves making sure your profile is complete, using the right kind of vocabulary in there, so including your job title in your headline, filling out your about section, writing about what you do, making sure all your skills are completed so that you're coming up on those searches and that your profile's being generated if someone's looking for someone like you. But then the second way of using it, which is really powerful, is actually using it as a networking tool. And I think especially as we're all offline at the moment and there's no in-person networking events happening, that's all gone online. And it's an amazing way to meet people. I mean, that's how we've connected. It's just through networking. And I think the key to that is just seeing it as a way to actually build relationships. So rather than just scrolling through content or perhaps even just liking posts, think about commenting meaningfully on people's posts. Think about actually even adding to the conversation and putting good quality content out there. And that's a really great way just to, I think, expand your network and expand opportunities that are available to you.
Totally agree. And comments in particular, I think, are probably the most underrated activity. I think when you give other people the gift of your engagement, I think that's a really good way to go, particularly if you're building up your own confidence around posting yourself. If you just go out there and start commenting and getting involved with the discussion, it will drive eyeballs onto your profile. It will drive reciprocity with the people that you're helping through your engagement. And it's just a lovely way to start. I think comments are very, very underrated. And as you say, you were kind enough to comment on a post that we put out. I then recognized the name, having seen some of your content previously, asked you on here. We had a conversation before the podcast started about whether there might be more crossover. And this is how these things work, right? But you've got to go out there and plant those seeds and add the value to get those conversations happening, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm amazed. I sometimes get more engagement on a comment on someone's post than I do just from posting content. It takes much less thought and effort. So yeah, there's an amazing opportunity there. And I think for anyone who's just kind of putting their foot in the water of LinkedIn and trying it out, I think commenting is a great place to start. And just, when you're commenting on someone else's post, it's not about, what can I get out of this? But think about how can you add value? Think about how can you support the person who's put some content out there? Think about what you can share to add to the conversation. And I think that's what generates, as you said, that reciprocity. And it's a great way as well, if you're actually looking for a job, you don't have to go out and connect with people, which, can lead to being rejected, not having your connection request accepted, which can be quite hard. But you can follow anybody, even if they've not activated that option. When you go on their profile, you just click next where it says connect and choose follow. You'll start seeing their content, you can start engaging on it. And then when you do send that connection request, there's a bit of familiarity there and they recognize you. They're much more likely to accept that request. And,
100%.
Relationship can build from there.
Yeah, warm up the relationship first. Really good, because I think that's good advice, even if they do accept. If it was a target employer, for example, to comment on their content and to warm them up before, how most people just kind of send their CV straight away or something. Like, you're absolutely right. The paying into the ecosystem, adding the value, and it's going to come flowing back around. So that's some lovely advice there. You mentioned at the start as well that, as well as the CV and the LinkedIn side, you help people more broadly in terms of their entire job search journey. So what other top tips have you got for us today in terms of people who are in transition? What kind of things should they be thinking about? What else can they do to either generate or secure job offers?
I think, it's a difficult one because there's really not a one size fits all approach, I think, to job search. And it's very easy to say, this is the method that I use. And I see this kind of thing on LinkedIn all the time. This is what I did. And I landed a job at this top company. But, I do recognize that different industries are quite different and perhaps require a slightly different approach. I think if you're someone who's in a job search and perhaps you're doing one thing and it's not really working out for you, I think one of the key things you can do is actually take an analytical view of what you're doing and the activities that you're doing and really think about what's going to give you the biggest return on investment. So if you're just spending all day filling out online applications and that's just getting you nowhere, then don't keep doing that, right? You need to kind of focus on the activities that are actually going to get you the results you want. Likewise, if you're spending all day on LinkedIn commenting and sending out messages to people and that's getting you nowhere, well, maybe that's not an approach that's going to work in your industry or your job level that you're looking to land. So I think really, a key thing is to consider all the different ways people get jobs and really kind of view your job search as a project in itself and take that analytical viewpoint and think, okay, I'm going to structure it. This is what I'm going to focus my time on and be intentional about whatever you're doing. I think it's quite easy to feel proactive and feel like you're doing something, but it might not be the thing that's getting you results. So
totally that. Yeah. For example, spending the whole time applying to job adverts. I see a lot of people spending a lot of time to it, when actually it can be a low hit rate in some industries, not all, but it can be in some industries. So I love this idea of what you're saying of, kind of experiment and test, but then be very honest with yourself about the data and the ROI that you're getting from those activities, so you can refine your approach as you go through the job search. So I love that test experiment type methodology. I think is awesome. So one thing I've also seen that I wanted to talk to you about is quite a lot of people deciding to go it alone and set up their own coaching practice, their own business, their own e-commerce site, their own startup, whatever it might be, over the last 12 to 18 months, which has been an exciting trend, I think, really exciting. But what do you think, having gone through that process yourself, are the pros and cons of employment versus business ownership?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, Andrew. I mean, I think definitely first recognize there are pros and cons, right? I think when you're employed in an office job, it can seem that running your own business is the absolute perfect thing and it's just going to be amazing and I'm just going to have all of this freedom. There are things I do miss about working in an office. I think that collaboration with co-workers, that kind of daily interaction that you have, a fixed salary that's the same every month, those things they're kind of worth something. And that's why I think a lot of people don't take that step and start their own thing, because that security is, or that, I guess, predictability isn't there. But I think a lot of people this year have realized, in terms of when we talk about security, actually a job isn't guaranteed security, right? I think when you are able to step out of that career ladder and that traditional employment and just start making money based off of your skills and your experience, in some way there's even more security in that, because you realize, well, no one's going to make me redundant. My industry isn't going to suddenly become extinct, or my company's not going to close. I'm in control of my own destiny. And I think you realize that you've got that ability to hustle and make things happen, and you're in control of that. And for me, that's a greater sense of security than relying on your employer to be loyal to you, which just doesn't always happen. And the flexibility of it as well, right? Being able to decide, to take holidays when you want or not. And I think that's one of the main benefits. And not commuting. That was the thing I hated most, which a lot of people aren't doing anyway now because they're working from home. But that kind of I think at my worst, it was about an hour and 20 minutes each way. And I just hated that. I hate driving. It stressed me out so much. So I like being able to decide where I want to work.
It's actually a really important point, that self-awareness around the commute. I hated commuting as well. I used to have to fly around when I was in Australia. And that's another thing that's glamorized. Oh yeah, you're flying interstate. It's not fun. There was nothing fun about it. But a really good exercise for people, if you do a career timeline from when you started your career to now, and you plot all your jobs, and then you write at each stage, where you've been really happy, where you haven't been happy, you can start to analyze some of the trends in terms of what it is that works for you and doesn't. And it's interesting you brought up commute, because quite often when I do that career timeline process for people, when we nail down why they were unhappy, it's quite often there was a lot of travel involved, or it was overbearing from a commute perspective. So it's really interesting you said that. So I like this idea about freedom that you said as well. I also agree it is over glamorized. Business ownership is over glamorized compared to the reality at times. So I thought that was a very balanced thing. Does your other half work with you in the business?
He does now, yeah. So we sort of phased it gradually. So at first it was just me. But since we moved back to the UK, we're both working on this. So so that's fun. Working with your spouse day in, day out. But I think it's a good thing as well. I think you see a different side to one another, and he's very good at the kind of the long-term planning and working on projects, and we just redid the website, and he's doing a lot of that side of things, and he really enjoys that. But I think one other thing as well, and I don't know if you find this, but I'm someone who always enjoyed quite doing different things. So, I like doing the client side of things, but I also like doing marketing. I like being creative. I like having ideas and implementing them. And I think often in a career where you're working for a part of a big company, your role is very narrow in terms of, right, this is what you know, don't worry about that. That's someone else's job to worry about that. You focus on this. And so I quite like actually being able to use all of those different skills and experience.
So when he started working with you and you had to let go of some of those things, how did that go? Because I found that interesting with my other half coming into what I was doing. So how did you find that?
As well?
Yeah, we're doing the same, yeah. How did you find that?
Do you want the honest answer?
I do, yeah, always.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a few conversations where it's sort of like, you know, please don't micromanage me and, you know, those types of things. But, you know, generally, I think we're getting there. We're finding our balance. I think at first it was trying to figure out whose role was what. And because I was used to doing everything myself mostly and I had complete control of it, it was quite hard for me to let things go. And I'm a perfectionist as well. So, you know, if there's a blog out there that's got a typo, that really bothers me. So I've had to just learn to let it go, and actually not everything needs to be perfect, and it's quite good to have somebody who's less concerned with perfection but more just action oriented and finding that balance. Yeah,
really good balance. And final question on that, because I think it's a really interesting trend, because we are seeing lots of, they're getting called couplepreneurs. Apparently we're couplepreneurs.
I've not heard that. Yeah,
there you go.
I might adopt that one.
Yeah, we're both in that camp. How do you, because there might be other people listening either in that situation or, you know, everyone's considering all these things at the moment, aren't they? How do you create boundaries to make sure that you're not then talking about the business the entire time when you're out with your little one or you're with your family or you're just having dinner together? Like, how do you make sure it doesn't become all encompassing?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it?
So I asked it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think, you know, we enjoy what we're doing and we enjoy talking about the business. So actually for us, it's, you know, we do talk about it at different times. We don't have set times, but it works for us. But we have tried to switch off at the weekends, and especially, you know, when we're spending time with our daughter, and just go out and do stuff and perhaps, you know, leave the phones at home or whatever it might be. But yeah, it's always going to be a difficult balance to get right, isn't it? But I think as long as you're enjoying it and it's working for you, I mean, for me, that's okay. How do you do it?
Badly. Well, I think part of the problem is because you're both busy during the day, you don't really get the chance to debrief on anything until the evenings. But I totally agree with you. I don't think there is any right or wrong on this stuff. You know, there's some people who get up at 5 a.m., meditate, write a journal, run a marathon before breakfast and all that, and good on them if that works for them. Equally, there's Warren Buffett who eats McDonald's all day and is a billionaire, right? So like you've got to find your own lane as a couple, as a business, as an individual trying to map your way through a career. I don't really believe in work-life balance because I'm more interested in like work-life integration, whereby you can find something when you align who you are with what you're doing, and then you can more holistically align that with what you need in other areas of your life. I think that's a win, right? And you can have good days and bad days, but I think overall that's a win.
Yeah, and living for the weekends isn't a good way to live anyway. So yeah, if you can enjoy what you do and just integrate it, as you said, I think that's a win-win.
Yeah, totally. So final last couple of questions, if we can. Any recommendations in terms of books or content or anything that you've read or consumed in the last couple of years that you think that you really rated and you enjoyed?
Yeah. Do you know what? I do struggle reading nonfiction. I much prefer to pick up a novel and read that rather than read a business book. My husband, he's much better at reading the business books. He struggles with nonfiction, and he'll, you know, read a bookshelf a year of nonfiction. But one that really has stood out to me over the years, it's a book called Yes, 50 Secrets from the Science of Persuasion. I don't know if you've come across that one. You're nodding.
I have, yep.
And I read that right at the kind of beginning of my sales experience. And I think the principles apply so well to so many different scenarios, and even in job interviews, in like, you know, talking about reciprocity and the principle of that. And I remember there's a story in that book where, so basically this book, it's 50 different kind of stories or tests that these scientists run to figure out how to get people to say yes. And one of the ones they did was they did an experiment in a restaurant where they left mints on the plate, and then they measured how that affected people's tipping. And even though the mints themselves had very, very low value and were very, very cheap, when there was a mint on the plate with the bill, people were much more likely to leave a tip. So principles like that, understanding that actually, if you even just give a little, you're much more likely to get something back from someone. So, you leave a little comment, and then when you go and ask them for something, they're more likely to say yes to you. So there's just really good principles in there to understand the psychology behind bringing people around to what it is you want. So I think that's a really good one.
It's a great recommendation. Thanks for reminding me of that book. I really, really enjoyed it myself as well. So I think we've covered some great ground, everything from CVs to LinkedIn to couplepreneurship to boundaries to getting people to yes. So you've been a really great guest. Thanks so much for spending the time with us. For anyone listening, if they want to follow up with you, get in contact with you, where do they find you, Hannah? What's the best bet?
Yeah, so my website is theenglishmeetingroom.com. That's all one word. I've got blogs on there. I've got free resources and all of the details of all my services on there. So that's a really good place to go if you want to find out a bit more about working with me. And as Andrew said, you can also find me on LinkedIn. If you just search Hannah Mason, fairly sure I would come up there. And on YouTube as well. We've got a YouTube channel under The English Meeting Room, which has got lots of videos where we're talking about CVs and interviews and job searching. So yeah, they're all the best places to reach me.
Well, anyone who's listened, make sure you go and check out all that content. There's loads of really awesome free resources that Hannah shared there. And just on behalf of all the listeners, thanks again for coming in. It's been really good to spend the time with you.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, Andrew.
Okay, take care. Thanks.
So thanks again for listening. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Hannah. Please do follow up directly with Hannah if you've got any questions for her or if you want to connect. And we'll see you back next time for another episode of the Executive Career Jump podcast. In the meantime, if you wanted a little bit more input into your job search, you could go a lot further wrong than to buy a copy of this book, the Job Search Playbook. So we published this a few weeks ago. We had a very, very simple brief, which was deliver something which is under 100 pages and under £10 that can help people understand what they want and how to get it. And this is the result. The reviews have been amazing. It became a bestseller overnight. We're super proud of it. So if you want some more help, go to amazon.co.uk or amazon.com, type in the Job Search Playbook and let us know what you think. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Career Jump podcast with Andrew MacAskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.